Hey parents, if you want some encouragement and help with this school year, keep watching. This past Sunday, I sat down with 3 educators within our church to look at some common questions that you probably have or will have as the school year goes along. I also had Susie Walker and Amy Golden write in some answers to these questions. I want to thank all the ladies for giving of their time and wisdom as they share with us. And I encourage you as parents to watch and learn, whether you're homeschooling, going online/virtual, or just taking your kids back to in-person school. I'm betting that some of these questions are on your heart and on your mind. As the video begins, each of the ladies are going to introduce themselves and kind of their background. Then we're going to dive into some questions. So keep watching.
My name is Melanie Dewaal. I have been homeschooling for 4 years. So this year we have a 4th grader and a 1st grader. And I also teach science to about 45 homeschool students 1 day a week at a cooperative.
I'm Sunni Wyatt. I teach in the Pell City school system. I'm a reading specialist, so I work with kindergarten through 3rd grade students and teachers with reading instruction. And this is my 21st year in the Pell City school system.
My name is Amy Hyden. I have about 20 years education experience, 20 of those as a private tutor for junior high and high school, 11 years in the classroom for junior high and high school, and then I have been homeschooling my daughter who's going into 5th grade this year. We've been homeschooling since about the middle of our 1st grade year, so this is our 4th homeschool year.
Well, the first question I want to start with is one that hopefully is on your mind, especially if you're teaching from home. And that first question is, what are the structures, rhythms, or routines that have helped your children stay consistent in learning? Again, mainly from home, but also even in the classroom. What are the things that help children learn consistently? So I'll throw it over to the panel and let any of you kind of open up and answer, and then we'll just build off of that and bounce around.
I will say for our family, what has worked well is to make sure the expectations were very well known. We have certain routines where we use daily, like we even start the morning with a checklist so that they know before all these things happen that this checklist needs to be completed. So that's been really helpful for us so that I'm not constantly having to stand over them and tell them what needs to be done, that those expectations are very clear and they're consistent every day.
I would echo that. Just have expectations. From a classroom teacher, then going to homeschool, that was actually a really difficult transition for me because the classroom rhythms are much more structured. I knew what class was coming in. I had math one period, or another class might come in, end of the day, and I knew what was going to happen. At homeschool, when I switched to homeschool, I found that was less so, and so imposing those expectations on my own child was very different than imposing them in my classroom. And so I would say have those expectations and be flexible until you figure out your routine, but develop a routine that works for you. And I would also say don't look at anybody else's routine. You might ask what they do, but your family's unique and your child is unique. And so coming from that, I would say figure out what works for your family and then stick to it as best you can.
I taught 4th grade for a long time and 3rd grade for a year and 5th grade for a couple of years, and every class was different. So I had to, even though I had an idea of how I wanted my schedule to go at school, I usually had to tweak it for the personality of the class. And when you think about when we're moving into virtual learning, some of those virtual teachers may have an idea of what their schedule is going to be at this point in the school year. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. And they may have to tweak that schedule too as we go along. So just the flexibility, I think, is very, very important moving along. But we do need a little bit of structure for sure.
I would say too that in being in the classroom, my students who were the most successful are the ones who had parents who had an established routine for when they would get home and when their homework was done. And as they got into high school, that was a lot looser because they were in sports and they were in those kinds of things. But my younger students that had more parental guidance. Just having that routine at home when they come home from school, especially in a year like this, when you don't really know what's going to happen from day to day, trying to establish that as best as possible will give your kids the most opportunity for success.
Okay, and I'll also add to that a comment from one of our contributors that said that one of the things, if you're able to do it, she had a room in her home for homeschooling, for education. So even if she said, even if it's just a small space, but a space where you can put your supplies, where you can have your books and kind of have everything together, and your child knows, hey, this is the space where I come in, where I learn, where I work on things, and kind of limit some of the distractions that are around them. And this mom found that was helpful with their child. Anything else y'all want to add or bounce off of that? Okay, let me continue. Our second question that we want to look at is, what if you as a parent are saying, I'm not the type A person. I don't lean towards structure and routines and organization. I'm not real good at that, but now I do want to homeschool, or I am homeschooling, or my child is going to be learning from home, virtual, online, either because we chose that or because we need to at some point during this school year help. I'm a parent, but I don't lean toward type A organization. What are some things that I can do to prepare and help my child?
I think one of the first things I thought about is that the school or your virtual teacher will probably have some structure for you to follow. So that will be, you will have to follow those guidelines. So that'll be your starting point. Just start with those and try to make that a routine and develop it as you go along. But one of the things that I like to do with my students in the past was if we needed to break the structure a little bit, I like to make it a game. So if we were moving into the next time slot, we might spin a spinner to decide what the next subject was going to be, or the next activity was going to be, or draw it from a hat. You're definitely going to need to take breaks, offer incentives. Those kinds of things are going to be vital, but start small and build up to a structure, but you're going to have some structure.
I'm not a type A person. I'm a very driven person, but I'm not a super structured person. And so that was daunting to me when I started homeschooling, especially I had taught high school for 11 years, and I was homeschooling a first grader, and I was slightly panicked. I didn't really know what to do. And so first, just to echo, the teachers in the schools, they'll give all of that information, but when you choose homeschooling curriculum, try to choose homeschooling curriculum, if you're picking it yourself, that has those things already outlined for you. So many of them do. And there are so many low cost, low budget options that already have those outlined for you, so that you really just need to open it up at the beginning of your week and plan and know what you're doing from day to day, but they've already told you what to do. So that was helpful for me. It helped me impose some order without me having to really stress over what a first, second, or third grader's day should actually look like, because I really didn't know at the time. And so that was helpful. And then the other thing was, since I'm not a type A person, we kind of let it flow with our day. And while we do have expectations and we get everything done in a reasonable amount of time, my daughter's not a type A person either. So we just kind of let it flow a little organically while still maintaining some structure. So
I will say one of the challenges of being at home, whether you're doing virtual at home or you're homeschooling, is just simply the amount of interruptions that could come in. Mm-hmm. So even if you're not a type A person, I would say try to protect your time that you have at home, even if it means, like, we had to make a rule that Mom didn't answer the phone while we were working on it, because if I did, there was always something going on, or there was always somebody that needed us to go somewhere. So even if you're not a type A person, you're still going to have the time to do it, so protect your time.
yes.
Another answer that was written in by one of our contributors says that even if you are a type A person, there's going to be times you're going to feel overwhelmed. This educator wanted to remind us to take advantage of the resources around us. If you're using the public school or a private school to educate, turn to the teachers, turn to the help that they provide. If you're homeschooling, use some of the structure within the curriculum, or talk to other people that are in your co-op or your cover school. Seek out help. I'd also say that almost all of the educators within our church that I've talked to, both homeschooling, public, private school, has said that they would be glad to help you as they have time. So take advantage of the resources around you when you begin to feel overwhelmed and are struggling with creating a good routine and structure for your child.
Again, I'll add something from one of our moms who contributed, and she, again, this mom said that I'm not the type A personality either, but she also realized that to homeschool, that there are some structures and things that she had to put in place, and she said she just kind of turned to God and said, God, I need your help and I need your gifting as I do this, and God was there to help supply some of that and help her. And as the ladies have shared, to figure out what works within your family and within your personality. She knew things that needed to be accomplished, but also could kind of go with the flow each day and each week. And so she said she worked to create that learning environment. She learned. It didn't happen just overnight, but over time, she was able to create some of those rhythms and routines that helped her child learn. So here's our next question. Question number 3 is kind of asking them to share what's kind of an appropriate block of time for your child to concentrate on a specific subject. And obviously as they get older, they can maybe concentrate a little bit more, but just maybe some help if you've got a first grader versus a third grader, what's an appropriate time to have them concentrate on a subject? And then also, are there things that we can do to help our children? Maybe you've got a child that's just a little more active and is going to struggle concentrating, and you've got others that can lean into that a little bit more. What are some things maybe that'll help that child that struggles to concentrate for longer periods of time?
I giggle a little bit when I saw this question because in my head, I'm comparing my 4th grader and my 1st grader. And even at the same age, they were completely different levels of concentration. So I think this very much depends on the student that you have. So like my daughter, when she was a 1st grader, we could sit and do most of her homework in 1, maybe 2 sittings without a lot of interruption. My son is now a 1st grader, and I think we have to get up every 10 or 15 minutes. And that's just how he works. And so I have to just know that. And some of that will be a skill he learns, and some of that is just personality. So I have to know that when I plan his work, that I have to plan for breaks. Or we do goofy things like I'll send him to check the mail. Or one day last week I told him to go up the stairs and slide down on his belly. Like, we just have to wiggle, and it's not a long break, but just enough for him to move, and then his body can come back and think again. So it varies very much depending on the kid.
We as adults need breaks too.
Yes.
We don't sit and focus on things for long periods of time either. So there's plenty of resources out there that give guidelines. I read one that said kindergarten 3 to 5 minutes, 1st and 2nd grade 5 to 10, 3rd through 5th 10 to 15. I've also heard their age in minutes is a good guideline. But again, you really do have to go with your child, and if they're struggling with concentrating, you have to find what works for your child. So you have to be creative, and that's what happens at school too. So that's not something that just happens at your house. At school, the teachers are always experimenting and finding what works for the students in their classrooms. And we don't, at school, we don't teach for long periods of time either. We have them moving into stations and working with the teacher here and doing something in another place. And we go to the bathroom, and we go outside for recess, and we go to lunch, and we go to music. They might not be moving around to do those things as much this year, but we do have breaks, and we have plans for them to have some breaks similar to that this year. So you just have to be creative, and that's what the teachers are doing right now. Probably right at this minute, they are working on being creative.
There's not a lot other to add to that, except for you just have to know your child. when I was teaching junior high and high school, even my junior high and high school kids, when I was teaching for longer periods of time and taught on a block schedule and I had them in my room for an hour and a half, it's a long time for junior high and high school to be in the room and doing things. So I had a pacing area of my room if my kids needed to get up and pace. Even if we were trying to memorize something, if they were trying to memorize something in math or we were doing group work, there was still an area where you could stand up and move around. And we employ that at home. I don't call it a pacing area at my house, but we do have, the space to get up and move around. I've also found that reading aloud while my daughter is working on something else. So we might have our grammar lesson and she's marking her grammar and doing whatever she needs to be doing. So for our literature, I might be reading aloud a chapter, which helps her to just be settled. And so I'll be reading that chapter aloud while she's marking her grammar, and then I can stop and check her grammar and she can move on to something else. But it's kind of a way to help her focus for a little bit longer, and because that story's going on, and that has helped us tremendously, just that one little addition to our day.
One of my favorite things that I was actually taught by a bunch of homeschool moms early was when you're reading to your student, they don't have to be sitting and following along with you in the book. They can be tinkering with some Legos. They can be coloring, and that's probably things y'all employ in the school all the time, but it was new to me, that they can be, shoot, my son's upside down on the computer, on the sofa next to me half the time. But he's listening, and so that's okay because they can do what they call active listening. And that works really well too.
And reading a book aloud and sharing a book is bonding moment. And so that's important too. And it just, in the classroom, it builds community. So at home, it can just build family, and build, those bonds and make them stronger. So that sharing a book does a whole lot of things, a whole lot. And it also, it also primes your child's ears for all the letters and sounds and words and vocabulary and sentence structure, all of those things that they're going to learn. If you're going to read aloud to your child, that is one of the most important things you can do. So.
Well, this next question kind of leads into that, and it's, what do I do when everything seems to be unraveling? If you're at home, you're teaching your child, it's virtual, online, whatever it is, your child's cranky, unruly, unresponsive, or even your classroom, it just seems you're not connecting, the day feels like it's falling apart. What do you do?
Well, wow. I think that's maybe a little bit of a twofold answer. One, sometimes you can prepare for that. It might sound weird, but in homeschooling, I have recognized learning struggles in my daughter that I might not have seen if she had just continued to be in the classroom, or they may have been caught later or something like that. But I can look ahead at our plan and know this is going to take us a little while, and this is going to be harder, so that might be the only thing we do that day, because something else can get pushed off, or maybe we do double up on our math lessons as we go along, and she'll never know that we doubled up on a math lesson or something like that. And so if it's an area where I feel like that's going to cause some unraveling or has the potential to cause some problems, we might do that. And I did that in the classroom too. If I knew a lesson was going to be harder, or this was just going to take more and could just have the class kind of devolve into anarchy, then that might be the only thing we did, or we might draw it out over a couple of days. So I think there's sometimes a way that you can prepare for that. Other days, you wake up on the wrong side of the bed, your child wakes up on the wrong side of the bed, and there's no way to prepare for that, except for to have some things already in your back pocket, like we're going to go for a nature walk, or we're going to go just sit outside and let the dogs run around and watch that, or I'm going to give you maybe 10 minutes on the iPad to just or a game that you can play, or we might stop and we might just play a game. Maybe we play a game about states. We're still learning, but we've stopped formal school and we're playing a game. So having those, being flexible and having those, awareness moments when you need to just stop and go do something different, that has, for us, and especially the older my daughter gets, that has lessened how big the unraveling can be sometimes.
It's a very emotional time. Our emotions are right at the surface, and you just never know which emotion is going to happen at which moment, and that's for the grown-ups in the room too. But something that worked well in my classroom with students was taking what we called brain breaks, and I had these little cards, and they were little brain break moves, but they were really yoga moves, and they had cute little names like airplane and all different kinds of things. But the thing about those yoga moves were they because they have a balance, you have to balance, they require balance, strength, and focus, and they use like all of your brain to do them, and you're breathing and you're doing all different kinds of things that it just shifts your focus a little bit. And then that deep breathing it always helps to do deep breathing, and I always say do something active, because you can't just keep pressing forward when things are unraveling. That's not a good idea. So, and another thing for myself, if I have to keep going, because sometimes you do have to keep going, I just think about what is one thing I can do, not everything, because sometimes that's why it unravels, because you're thinking about the whole of it. But if I can just do one thing, what's one thing I can do? And then if I can get focused on one thing, a simple thing, then I might can do the next thing. So that's another good tip.
Absolutely. I agree wholeheartedly with what y'all said. I think there are days when you just have to stop and walk away. And it may not, and I'm not saying you walk away for the whole day, but for us, we have to shift gears when we're coming apart like that. I remember trying to force it sometimes, and like, we're going to get through this subject before we take a break. But by the time you get to the end, they don't know what you did. You might have gotten it on the paper, but they didn't learn anything. So when you are coming to those points where people are just cranky and coming apart, I think it's important to recognize that and to know that you just need to shift gears for a minute. Like you said, do yoga. We usually have snack time then. Like, we'll go get a cookie. Yes,
that's always a good
makes
idea.
everybody happy, right? We'll go get a cookie and something to drink, and usually by the time that is over, we've all calmed down and we're a little more content, and our brain has shifted gears away from school for a minute. And when we come back to it, it just is not what it was when we left. And so I think it's really important just to recognize that and know that it's not worth the fight to force it a lot of times.
I think sometimes as parents we forget that our children don't have the emotional capabilities that we do, and so how we deal with our own unraveling is very different than how a child deals. And part of our, whether you're homeschooling or whether they're going to school, the responsibility is still the same, to help them learn to deal when they're stressed, and to help them learn to handle anxiety or emotions in an appropriate way. And so again, knowing your child, but then figuring out what works in that moment. And as a parent, the struggle is not to join them. Right?
That's not just for parents.
Right. Not a parent teacher in that moment when you're educating, it's just not to join in the devolving of your day, to kind of separate yourself from that, to be empathetic, and to help them understand how to deal with those things.
And I will say, just as a teacher, that there might be a day when the teacher's day might unravel as well. So just pray for your teachers and give them a little bit of grace too. They might also need to go outside and go for a walk or eat a cookie or something. So we're human too. So.
One of our contributors noticed that last semester, when they went online and virtual, the longer that went, the mood of the kids started to decline, and she just noticed that it was more difficult to teach. So she stepped back and she began to think of some creative ways to re-engage the students. She would come up with projects or lessons that were more hands-on or were outside, or just something a little bit different to help the kids re-engage.
This next question is geared a little bit more toward those who will be teaching at home, either homeschooling or online or virtual learning. But what I want the ladies to share about what changes, what kind of roles, expectations, or responsibilities within the home changed when you moved to now teaching your child at home. And how can we help those that are watching this video kind of prepare for some of the new challenges that are going to come up when before your child was in school and you had a little more freedom and time to do different things. Well, now your child is in home and you're teaching them during that time. along with the other roles and responsibilities you played in the home. Can y'all just speak to that a little bit?
The philosophy I've adopted is that we're all doing this for the first time right now. From parents and children all the way up to the superintendent and the state level superintendent, everybody's doing this for the first time. I know we did something in the spring, but this is very, very new for all of us. We're going to encounter challenges. We have a new platform in the school system. We're definitely going to have technology and internet issues. We're just going to have to give ourselves grace and learn as we go. So just remember that we're all in this together. That's the big thing. We're just all first year teachers.
I didn't see my responsibility so much as different as being at home meant that my expectations of my child were different. Whereas when I was teaching and she was going to school with me, we were leaving really early in the morning. We were getting home mid-afternoon, and then, she was little, didn't really have that much homework, but I had work and dinner and stuff like that. So as we transitioned into that home, and for people who are transitioning, maybe your child already has a schedule of chores or those kinds of things, but that helped me tremendously. That checklist, like you mentioned in the morning, for us, we don't really start school until our beds are made, our space is tidied, everything is kind of in order, not spotless, but just we have some routines. So transferring some of that responsibility, I say transferring, but requiring that of my daughter was different than when we were in the school every day routine, because now we're at home and we're living in it, and you're there day in and day out. And for parents of junior high and high school students, they're very much able to do a lot of their own virtual learning and virtual learning responsibilities. They can read, they can understand the instructions from their teachers sometimes better than you can. And so what they need more than anything is accountability. What they might bristle at more than anything is accountability, but I have seen it where they've taken a virtual class, even if they were in a classroom setting, and then they get to December and they haven't done as much as they should have done, or they, and I know there's some safeguards in there, but really making sure that your junior high or high school student, if they're in virtual learning for the first time, there's a lot of extra freedom there that they're not used to, so that they have a set time where they need to be working on their schoolwork. They need to be accountable for how much they get done during the day. And then as parents, no matter how much you trust them, that you're checking that, because that's your responsibility now. They might not be turning every assignment into the teacher. Going back and making sure that all their virtual learning requirements are completed, that's really important.
I think, like Sunny said, whatever you are doing this year for the first time, make sure and give yourself a lot of grace.
Yes.
And remember that just because it doesn't happen today doesn't mean that you've messed up for the whole semester. Like, every day is a new step, and you have time to get it done, and you'll make it up. There'll be days that go really, really well, and you'll think, yes, I can do this, and then the next day your whole world's going to fall apart. That's just teaching kids, and that's just how it goes. And just remember that it's a step at a time, and it's a process, and it's not just something you arrive upon at some point. Specifically for being home with your kids, though, I will say this. For us, it's really important for us to have some time away from each other, because we are with each other all the time. So we have a point during the day when everybody goes to their room and does their own thing for a little while, and I don't care what they do while they're in there. A lot of times they read books, they play with toys, but it's your alone time where we're not in each other's business, and I think that really helps just the flow of the family, because you need some time to do your own thing without other people involved. So just something to tuck in the back of your head.
One of our contributors also wrote in that her attitude was often key. If she had a good attitude, if she was enthusiastic and ready for the day as she taught her kids, it worked much smoother than when she was irritated, anxious, and distracted. The kids pick up on that, and it really helped the day or sometimes hurt the day. So pay attention to your own attitude and make sure that you come with a heart and mind prepared to teach and have fun with your child.
Okay, our next question, I'm going to combine two of them, and this question is a little bit more for those that are taking their children to in-person school. And the question is this: how can we prepare our children to return to school in person? For most of our kids, this is going to be the longest stretch they've ever been outside of school, and now they're going to be returning. So how can we help them prepare for that? And then also with that, how can we partner and help our teacher or our teachers that are going to have our kids? I know this is something we should do every year, is communicate well with our teachers and care for them, but especially this year, I want y'all to share some insight on how to prepare for the school year, how to communicate and partner well with teachers.
One thing that I've been doing is I've been practicing wearing my mask for longer periods of time. I didn't start doing that until just recently, but it takes a little bit of endurance to wear your mask. So that's one good tip. Practice wearing that mask a little bit longer because we are going to be wearing masks in school in Pell City. And then another cute little thing is I've seen a lot of the different social distance greetings, and I think those are a good idea to just work on a few of those because you know, we've taught our children for a long time that being kind means sharing or, you know, holding hands or you know, giving somebody a hug. Well, now being kind is the opposite. So, you know, we have to talk to them a little bit about those kinds of things. And I'm sure that most of you have seen an informational video from your child's principal or from the schools, or you probably know a lot about what's going on and you can tell your child all about those things. But what I really think you should do is ask your child what they wonder about school and talk to them about that, and just be as honest as you can answering their questions, because you can tell them all about it, but they might not really care about what you're saying, or they might not be listening if they are not wondering what those things are. So I would ask them what questions they have. And as far as communicating with the teachers, again, I want to return to that grace, because the teachers are also having anxiety, and it could be about the virus, it could be about virtual learning, it could be about trying to get their room spaced out and distanced, it could be about a whole lot of different things. You know, just it could be about, you know, having the kids coming back in and trying to help rebuild that love of school and community, but the teachers are having anxiety too. And so please communicate with the teachers, but give them grace too. So they want to know, we want to know what's going on with your children. We want to know what anxieties they have, but we also need a little bit of encouraging. Like I said, there's probably teachers at the schools right now. We're here on a Sunday afternoon. I can guarantee there's probably cars in most every school right now, because this is as hard as we've ever had to work to prepare for in-person school. I've never seen teachers working harder, and we're tired, and we are so excited to have children back in the buildings. That's what we signed up to do. But we're working very hard. So if you will communicate with us those things, then we'll know better what's going on. And if the teacher communicates something with you, respond if you need to. Don't wait, because usually if a teacher's sending a message, it's something important to respond to. So just keep those lines of communication open. Be kind. They might have a day where they don't respond the right way, because again, we're all human. So just try to, one thing that I like to do in a meeting is assume positive intentions, and I think that's what we all need to do with each other. The teachers need to assume positive intentions from parents, and parents need to assume those positive intentions as well, because it's just one of those years where it's definitely going to be our hardest year to date. So just keep all of that in mind, and if you get a message that you feel is not exactly what you want it to be, just take a deep breath and try to consider perspective. And I hope and pray that we as teachers will do the same thing on our end, and just communicate. So, and just let us know what problems you're having, because we can't fix them if we don't know. So that was a lot for me.
That's good. I agree with what you said, and I think a lot of that we have to remember that our kids pick up on our attitude toward things. And so even our cooperative, as we're going back under the same regulations as public schools. So we're doing masks and we're doing distancing, and it has made my job as a teacher tremendously difficult. And so but I can tell what would help me tremendously going back into the classroom is to know that Mom has encouraged the kid that we're going to be okay and we're going to be safe, and Miss Melanie's going to teach you and we're going to have fun. And to know that those things have been told, and it's not just the grumps. Because I understand the grumps, like this is not easy. But really trying to build into your student also that mentality of grace and flexibility through this year, I think would go a long way.
Yep. I'm good.
Awesome.
Don't have anything to add to that.
Well, we are getting close to the end here. I've got this question, and then I'm going to let them close with anything they want to share. So kind of the final scripted question that I have for them is just to share opportunities that we have to nurture our children spiritually, whether it's through homeschool, online virtual, private school, homeschool. How can we encourage our children spiritually to teach them and build them up, or allow them, the older they get, to see their school as an opportunity to bear witness to Christ and live for Christ? So how can we nurture our children spiritually? And then also with that, how can we be in prayer for our schools, for our teachers, for our administrators and principals and everybody involved there? So I'll throw it over to y'all with this kind of final scripted question.
I was thinking about this question when I was reading through, and Isaiah 33, it says that He, Christ, God, will be the sure foundation for your times. And that's for any time. And you look back through scripture, and you look especially in books like Esther and Ezra, Nehemiah, and they were living in wildly uncertain times, with great peril and great danger, and God empowered the people to make a difference. And I think that we are living in a time of kingdom opportunity that we have not seen maybe in our lifetime. And that when God pushes and when He causes these kinds of discomfort, He's calling us close, but He's also calling us to be mediators of peace and calm, and to show people that He is our sure foundation. And so encouraging your kids to not worry, to not be anxious, to cast all their cares on the Lord, to speak those scriptures over them, and encouraging your kids and to be bringers of peace and calm in their classrooms and with their teachers and with their fellow students. And that's not a callous disregard for any danger or any rules. That's saying, oh, well, God's going to take care of it, so I don't have to worry about any of this. But it's that respect and following the rules, and that respect and doing what's being asked of you, whether you agree with it or not, but understanding that He's the sure foundation, and really helping your kids understand that even though this time seems weird and it's causing anxiety in a lot of people, that our foundation is different and it's not based on our circumstances. And I feel like I was thinking about that question, that scripture repeats that so many times, that our circumstances don't dictate the character of God or how we respond because of His character. So
I think that's how I thought about the question too, that and in public school, that this is, our relationships with others are the same, and we just still, nurture those kinds of witness to others and be kind and be what we are, representatives of Jesus in that arena in the best ways that we can, are the same now. Again, I said earlier, we show those kindnesses maybe in a different way, but just being there. But we do in the public school absolutely covet prayer, perseverance, strength, grace, and just, anytime you think of it, we really appreciate it. And really appreciated Mark's prayer this morning, and we're thankful for every word.
think about Deuteronomy whenever I read this question, and it says we are to teach our children diligently. And it doesn't qualify if you're public school or if you're homeschool or any kind of situation that you're in. Regardless, you are called to teach the Word of God to your children. So when you rise up and you walk along the streets, it's supposed to be on your lips. It's supposed to be written on the walls of your house and on your conversations. And that is how we are to go about training our children in the ways of the Lord. And I don't think that changes depending on where you teach your kid. So if you're driving them to school, you're speaking about the Lord and you're preparing them for the anxieties or the frustrations or whatever it is. Even when we get up in the mornings, we have days that my kids will be anxious about something. We open that conversation and we talk about it, and we talk about the way that the scripture has us to deal with it. I find it really helpful. It's not just mom's opinion when I talk about it. This is what the Word of God says. And so we teach that and we put that into them so that when those things come up later in life, that is what comes to their mind. It's those words that will diligently speak to their soul and speak to their heart. And that's what we're all called to do. We're called to teach our children diligently the Word of God and His ways.
And absolutely. I'll just build off of that. Another one of our teachers added that exact verse out of Deuteronomy 6, and she wrote it down and just put, you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your might. And these words that I command you today shall be on your heart. And that's to us as parents, as adults. And then it continues, you shall teach them diligently to your children. And you shall talk of them when you sit in your house and when you walk by the way and when you lie down and when you rise. You shall bind them as a sign on your hand, and they shall be as frontlets between your eyes. You shall write them on the doorpost of your house and on your gates. And just a critical reminder as parents that we're teaching and training and nurturing and instructing our children in who God is and how to live for Him and the love that He has for us, no matter what setting we find ourselves in. Well, I want to close with this just to see if they have any final words of encouragements or anything that has come to mind, and then we're going to wrap up. Anything else y'all want to share?
One thing that I thought about this afternoon was that we're so excited in the public school to welcome children back to school, but we also must be vigilant to stay healthy. So do the things that are recommended to stay healthy. Wear your mask, wash your hands, don't touch your face. Those things are very important too. So, the healthier we are, the better face-to-face school is going to go. So, do your best to stay healthy. We can't control everything, but we can at least control our own actions.
Give grace to yourself and to everyone else involved, and I don't think you can go wrong at that point.
Well, I thank you for taking some time and listening to us. I thank these moms and these teachers and our panel, and I thank you for others that have contributed, that have written in and are sharing with us. And parents, most of all, just want you to know, as a church, as a staff, we love you, and we're here to support you and to help you and to serve you well. We pray this video is a service to you, and we pray as this school year continues that we'll be here to serve and help along the way. So thank you for your time.